the All Birdies, No Bogeys podcast, your weekly disc golf analysis podcast right here on JomezPro. I'm your host, Brian Earhart. My co-host, Nate Perkins, joins me again. And Nate, 20 days until the season starts. Super excited. Wow. I think this is a perfect time to discuss what we should all be looking out for. And that's the PDGA rule changes going into 2026. We just got the rundown from Andy Rothschild, the PDGA. We wrote some notes down. We got a lot to talk about. Lots changing, especially at the highest level of disc golf this season. But first and foremost, players are starting to get out there and compete leading up to this first Disc Golf Pro Tour event. Bring us into it, Nate. Where are the players playing right now?
Yeah, I always think it's quite interesting to follow the players over the winter and see who really likes to still get out there and compete, in different parts of the country, really different parts of the world right now. There's actually, I'm scrolling down this PDGA list, and there's a Southeast Asia tour this year. Officially, they kind of linked up some tournaments together, and Yakub and Clay Edwards are over there battling in Chiang Mai right now.
Love
with
that.
Shasta Chris just behind. So this is PDGA Asia Tour event number 4. It's actually a B tier, but I'm pretty interested to see the development here, because I see, just as I've mentioned with the growth of disc golf in New Zealand, I see Southeast Asia being a place that's very attractive for, players from the United States and Europe on the DGPT to head down and keep things crispy throughout the offseason. So that's pretty interesting. Aaron Herman, tournament director over there in Chiang Mai. And then we're going to jump over to Bainbridge, Georgia. It is an A-tier event, and we have a lot of recognizable names in both FPO and MPO. So FPO right now, Lisa Fakis just shot a 999 rated round 2.
Ballin'.
992 rated round 1, 999 round 2 with the bogey to finish. And mind you, this is being recorded on a Saturday, so this is through 2 rounds. Lisa Fakis leads Rebecca Cox by 4 strokes and leads Ellie Ezra Middling by 8 strokes. Other notable names in the field include Maria Oliva and Caden Spurs, who are both currently over par, averaging below their rating. And then we jump over to the MPO field, Brian. Nathan Queen currently leading through 2 rounds. Today, he shot a 1061 rated 8 under par. That included 2 bogeys. Yesterday, he was 1050, 6 under par. Notable names that he's leading. So he's got Chandler Kramer, who has been hot this offseason. He's got him by 5. He has Ryan Mon by 5, Harper Thompson by 6, as well as Braden Sides by 6. And then we've got Jake Mon in the field, Evan Scott, Zach Arlinghouse, Double G, and an Ezra Robinson is actually well down the leaderboard. He had a double bogey and 3 singles today to shoot a 1009 rated round. He's currently in 11th place, 14 strokes back of the lead. So I'll be interested to see how he finishes up tomorrow during that final round at the Bainbridge Oaks course on Bainbridge Island. And then we're going to jump quickly back to New Zealand. So this is the 4th and final round of MVP's Tour Down Under from the South Island. They're in Christchurch, New Zealand. It is a lovely place to find yourself this time of year. And we'll start with FPO, because FPO has actually been pretty competitive over there on the Tour Down Under. So Chandler Ray, who finally announced that she is signing with Infinite Discs, she is currently, actually, we can go live here because it's Sunday for them, Brian. So they are in this final round right now. Chandler Ray is outside the cash line. Taylor Chosick just inside. And Sarah Hokum is battling with Sophia Donica. Sophia Donica is 2 strokes ahead of Hokum. Sophia hasn't played her best golf so far on the TDU. I think she is probably the most talented player in that field, and her game, I feel like, translates the best back to the Disc Golf Pro Tour, followed by Chosick, who has been improving every week. And then we jump over to MPO. They are about to start the final round. They're playing the Bottle Lake Forest course, highly technical. So Paul Oman is outside the cash line right now. Eli Swanson is outside the cash line. Bradley Williams had a slow round 2. He has fallen back. Corey Ellis had a slow round 1. Him and Bradley are currently 9 back of Levi Stout.
Wow.
9 back. So Levi is playing some phenomenal golf. He goes 1034 round 1 and a 1060 rated round 2. He leads Luke Humphreys by 3, and he has 6 over third place going into this final round. So he's looking for his second Tour Down Under victory in 4 starts this year. And again, we just had him on the pod. I'm really excited to see his game and see it translate back to the Pro Tour. And we've got one more tournament on this roundup, Brian, and you know which one it is. It's going to be the Memorial. This has previously been a national tour event. For many years, this was the start of the disc golf season in my book, and in your book, I believe, as well, Brian. This was where the family reunion started, like where the reconvening of the players who hadn't seen each other all off season. It was Memorial for a while, then it was Vegas, then the Memorial. It was a Pro Tour, I believe, in 2019. Now it is neither. It is an A-tier event, but I still firmly believe that this is a coveted title in the world of disc golf. It has always been an event where you have to shoot extremely low if you want to be relevant. One thing about this tournament, Brian, that was actually pretty shocking was the size of the FPO field. Okay, it is small. I couldn't quite put my finger on why exactly it was so small. I saw Jeff Panis from Innova post about it and ask the question, why 9? Where is the FPO across the United States, and why do they not travel to this event? Currently, Jennifer Allen shoots a 1028 rated. We're talking about a likely a top 30 all-time rated FPO round. And this is during round 3. She leads Owen Scoggins by 6 strokes and Kona Montgomery by 18 strokes going into the final round, which will be tomorrow on Sunday. That is very impressive. I'm actually going to mention MP40 real quick here because our very own Nate Sexton shoots a 1049 rated round 3. And he is tied with Scott Withers. They have had a lot of battles over their career coming out of Oregon. And they are tied at 30 under par through 3. They lead Pete Ulibarri, essentially the local. That is Paul Ulibarri's. Is that his brother or his uncle?
No, it's his brother. And
that's his big
one
bro.
of the most interesting people to talk to. If you haven't already seen this video, Pete does a YouTube video on the flight of a disc and why a disc flips, why a disc turns and fades and does all that. It's so fascinating. I think it's some of the best information that we have in the game on that topic. So check that out. Yeah, that card, Sexton, Withers, Ulibarri, Andrew Bohm, another legendary player from Arizona. Martin Hendel made the trip down from Canada. Masters just keeps getting better and better, Nate.
It sure does. That's a great note about Pete Ulibarri. And then, you know, another notable Daniel Polk in the field. He's out of the Twin Cities, and he's also a legend. And he battled with Sexton, with Paul Oman, Kayla Viska, and Joe Revere at the Masters, U.S. Masters in New Mexico last year. We're going to jump over to MPO because there's a lot of talent in this field here. And I'm actually going to start further down with some notables because Lucas Carmichael is a slinger. He's 10-15 out of Colorado. He started the tournament off on that lead card with an 11 under 1043 rated round. And I want to note that they are playing a brand new course for the Memorial, right? So if you guys remember, for years, it's been the Fountain Hills course, you know, one of the most visually recognizable courses in our game, the giant fountain, you know, desert backdrop, right? It's a 55 and older community there just outside of Phoenix, Arizona. And then it's been Vista, right? Another very visually recognizable course. And Vista has been phased out. And it's my understanding that Vista del Camino, it was just too dangerous, right? There were too many, there's too many risks with people walking through the course, right? There's a sidewalk that goes right through the middle of the course. And so while the golf wasn't necessarily outdated, I think the setting of the course, it was just time to find a new one. They are playing the Red Mountain South course. I got to speak to Gannon Burr. He hit me back. He said, didn't love it, right? It's 350-foot hyzers almost on every hole. It's a lot of blind shots. And the terrain, it's very desert, it's very dry. You know, your discs are getting scuffed up against the rocks. We had a couple players who were signed up for the event that actually dropped it last minute because of the quality of the course. So,
Wow.
doesn't mean we're taking anything away from what this event is doing. I think it makes a lot of sense that when you want two courses for the pro field, so you can make this pro field big, you can make this am field big, and you can really put on the event that you want to put on. Sometimes you kind of have to make a sacrifice in the quality of the course to push things through. So not dogging on those event directors for pushing that new course through. Notable names, Brian. We've got Connor Rock in the field. Okay, currently he is 7 down through 15 at round 3 at Fountain Hills. He is only 8 back of the lead. Another notable, Ricky Wysocki's younger brother is currently inside the top 10. He's playing some good golf. 8 down through 16. Also just 8 back of the lead. Cam Rico, that is Steve Rico's nephew. He's playing good golf. He's 7 back. And then we have Zaylen Nash. That is San Diego's highest rated player. He's just 6 back. And then we go up Aviel Gomez out of the Santa Cruz, Watsonville area. Young talent, 1024 rated. He's playing golf, 5 back currently. And then we have Parker Welk and Drew Gibson. Okay, Drew Gibson is 14 down through 17 holes as we are recording this podcast. He shot a 13 down yesterday. He shot 1050, but because the number 1 player in the world, Gannon Burr, birdied 17 holes in a row. That's right. A repeat. He birdied the first 17 holes, and then he took a par on 18 to shoot a 1089 rated round.
Yikes.
2. He's in the lead. He's just 3 ahead of Drew and Parker Welk, and he is 2 ahead of Aaron Gossage, who just came off a win at the La Mirada Open with his new MVP lineup. So we're gonna have a battle on our hands here with some notable names, and honestly, I'd love to see it. I'm always interested to see the strings of birdies that are put together out at the Memorial. Brian, what do you got about the weekly roundup?
Well, I think the Memorial is a great time for players to really see if they're locked in. I mean, when you have a really challenging course that demands a lot of tough lines, you can simply outclass other players. But out here, the playing field is completely level. If you're not going, especially at Fountain Hills, if you're not going 7, 8, 9 down in the back 9, 7 almost feels like a failure as well. You got to go double digits there. I feel like when you can do the simple, mundane things over and over again, you're really ready to compete at the highest level. And when you see a player like Gannon show up and do what he did and still be 2 shots ahead of the second place, that's why these guys are there. They want to go into a shootout. They want to put pressure on themselves right from the first tee. There's not really course management to be done out there. So I think, first off, huge shout out to Aaron Gossage learning the bag as quickly as he did.
Yep.
He's looking fantastic right now on the coverage that we've watched, the videos of him throwing. He looks like he's getting better and better and better. If the putt stays solid, who knows? I mean, even if he makes a marginal improvement from last year, even in just circle 1, middle circle 1, we could see him win multiple Disc Golf Pro Tour events this year. But again, Gannon shooting 17 under, and now he's only 2 up. That's awesome. That's awesome disc golf. I'm sad that the Memorial is no longer on tour. One of my best finishes ever, I think 2019 on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. I got 6th or 7th place there. and I had a shot to win. I missed like the amount of circle ones
Wow.
that I maybe not win. I think that was the year Eagle one, and it was just absurd. But
Well,
I
let's
missed
check
the
it.
amount of
Let's
putts
check
that
it
would have
out.
gotten me to. Yeah, let's see it. Yeah, I got eighth place. I always
That is
misread these performances, but
sick, Brian.
it
What?
was
So you
tough,
went
man.
1032, 1060, 1046, 1054. You cashed for 4 digits in the year
Yeah.
2019.
Yep.
That is nasty.
But you go into the rest of the season feeling like, okay, I threw a bunch of hyzers. I executed the simple stuff well. I'm ready to go into the rest of the year. And, I didn't have the year that this tournament gave me. I mean, I still definitely made progress as a player. That was my second year on tour, but it was great to start off like that. But really, Nate, uh, I want to get into these rules. I want to talk
Yeah,
about
let's do it.
2026, how these rule changes are going to affect the players. I think there's some that are going to completely change the way the game is played, especially at the top level. Some of these are exclusive to pro tours and majors, but I'm ready to get into it. We had a meeting with PDGA. They kind of laid it down on us. They gave us the
Yeah.
rundown, and we're going to
Which I
share
want to
that with
touch
you.
on. I want to touch on
Go
that
ahead.
real quick because I felt the steps that the PDGA took to create this meeting and to talk about it, I loved.
Same.
It's new to me, right? But the intention of this meeting was to inform the broadcasters. So that includes us on DGN. That includes post production commentators like on Jomez and some other channels. What their intention is to make sure that all of us are informed on all these new rule changes so that when we are speaking on it during the tournament that we have a clear understanding, because often myself included, I had a misunderstanding of the rule and then that would come through on the broadcast and then people take that as truth and then it's all skewed. And even some players are like, wait, I heard, Perkins or Earhart or whoever it may be say this on the broadcast. We were incorrect. So I love the initiative taken by the PDGA and Aaron to kind of clear all this up. And then let's get right into it, Brian. I want to hear and talk about some of these changes.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I know this is one that really got you going. You wanted to like argue and like change the rule on the meeting, and I'm really
Right.
interested to hear you kind of hash this out. I know you kind of had to shut yourself up and let the meeting continue, but
Mm-hmm.
80102 enforcement thrower no longer votes on determination. So a lot of new text has been added here, and I'm very curious about this. So let me just read this for the people that have not read this yet. When the flight position or status of a disc is questionable, the determination is made now by group vote. It used to just say the group. Now, all this new text is going on the group vote. So, number one, all players excluding the thrower must participate in the first vote. The option with the most votes is the determination of the group. This is like an out of bounds call, a mandatory miss or make. Maybe it's fuzzy there. Uh, that's when a vote would take place. The thrower may briefly, this is a big one. The thrower may briefly state their opinion, but may not argue or lobby the group for an outcome. A thrower who argues or lobbies for an outcome has committed a courtesy violation. If there is a tie after the first vote, so like you're in a threesome, then the thrower then gets to vote, which essentially breaks the tie because they're not going to really vote against themselves unless it's a very niche scenario. So the last thing, and actually, public comment has actually changed some of the wording. So this is the current wording of this. Players may abstain from a group vote if and only if they were not physically present. Otherwise, abstaining from a group vote is a courtesy violation. And this is a very niche scenario, essentially only reserved for bathroom break. And when you take a bathroom break also matters as well because you have to watch people throw their shots. So it would be kind of a strange niche scenario. Last
Yeah.
thing, though, to clarify this, benefit of the doubt is not a thing. They made it very clear to us on the meeting. Benefit of the doubt is not a thing. You hear that wording all the time at tournaments. You hear that as players try to lobby for them to get a good result on some sort of declaration. The actual wording is now tie goes to the runner. So players must vote. The thrower cannot try to influence the vote. They can only vote as a tiebreaker. Nate, I know this kind of got you going.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts.
Okay. I'll start with I believe that the intention of the rule here is great, right? We are trying to clear up some muddy waters because there were a lot of situations when the card wasn't able to come to a decision where all the player has to do is get one person to vote with them, and then all of a sudden most cards are a card of four, and then it's 2v2, and then you know the players would then mention benefit of the doubt because it's a tie vote, and they would get the call. So I think the intention of this rule change is good. Where it I think went awry for me is section 2. The thrower may briefly state their opinion, but they can't argue or lobby the group. In my mind, this wording is very ambiguous because what defines briefly stating their opinion? So, for example, when you have a very passive player, that player might just open their mouth and say, I think I win OB right here. And that could be briefly stating their opinion. And then if you have a player with a different personality on the opposing spectrum, they're briefly stating their opinion might be a little bit more, aggressive or long-winded
Persuasive.
and persuasive. Exactly. So they are briefly stating their opinion, but it's multiple sentences of, I threw my disc exactly like this. It got up on Annie and went over here without question. It went up on Annie and then and then it turned OB way up the fairway versus the person that just said it's OB back here. And in my view, that the stating of their opinion in a long-winded, persuasive way, that essentially is arguing or lobbying the group for an outcome. So in my view, the water is still pretty muddied here because who is going to define whether or not the player briefly stated their opinion or whether it was too long? I think there's a lot of ambiguity here, and it's going to lend to some debate that is going to have to be brought back up to a tournament director or an official. What do you think on that?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this exact thing because it might come down to another vote because I'm kind of joking here, but if it comes down to it and the player's like, well, I was just stating my opinion, I wasn't lobbying. If two players in that card think they were lobbying, you get a courtesy violation. So it technically is another vote on whether or not it was lobbying, and they get a courtesy violation. And frankly, I don't know what else they can do about that. So to me, it might start some arguments, but uh, I think at the end of the day, players are going to know that. And I think players in these scenarios are going to be very cautious before they open their mouth. And I think,
Okay, I'll play devil's advocate
go ahead.
there, Brian, because the big issue that we've had about self officiating, and we've all experienced this, is the emotional repercussions of dishing out a warning or a courtesy violation to a player on your card affect the rest of your round, right? And so often players are really choose and decide not to put out that courtesy violation because they just want to focus on their own game. Like they don't want to have to go through whether or not their friend, or acquaintance, coworker, essentially are upset at them for, throwing out that courtesy violation. Is it personal? So, do you feel that players will actually be incentivized to dish out courtesy violations for players that are arguing or lobbying for their case?
So my thought is in these scenarios, someone would have to rub me the wrong way in this interaction for me to give the courtesy violation. And otherwise, I would give them quote unquote benefit of the doubt. I wouldn't say that. But if someone is just saying, hey, listen, this is what I saw, great. Then I look to the other two people that I have to vote with, and it's down to us. They can say what they want, but if they keep going, if we're talking and they're still just like ba 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 while we're trying to make a decision, then yeah, you turn to them and you give a courtesy violation. And frankly, I'm kind of a bad case because I've given multiple because I don't want to put up with that. And I feel like if you set the standard that you don't put up with that, people eventually go along with it. So I don't know. I think it's going to be okay. I think threesomes though are great. If you're in a threesome, if one of the guys drops off your card because of an injury or something, you got a great time getting calls going your way because you just need a tie. So that's an interesting dynamic. And again, niche scenario. I don't know if it's ever going to play out too often, but um, the other thing is you're not going to have a threesome on a lead card, but you might have a threesome on a lower card. And again, that's just a slight competitive advantage. But I don't know. Overall, I know it's hard to self officiate. I think in general, the PDGA's goal is to make it easier to do that. And I think we
Yep.
talked about it last year when we were talking about stance violations and stuff like that. Nothing in the rules about stance violations that we're going to be talking about today. So yeah. But Nate, final thoughts on this one moving forward.
Yeah, I think there's some ambiguity, but I think they're heading in a good direction. And for the most part, I don't see this being a major issue out on the tour, right? I think that players can follow suit and briefly state their opinion. I think there will be some rare examples where they forget that they can't argue because it gets heated and they really feel like there's an injustice and they need to argue. But for the most part, it's heading in a good direction.
All right, moving on. Now, this is where things start to get juicy because we're going to talk a lot about time. And I feel like they're trying to close some loops or
Yep.
some loopholes. And it starts with 80203, excessive time, better defining when the clock starts. So this is all new wording here. And it's finally telling us when we can start the time on our card mates. The allotted time begins after one, the previous player has thrown, and the player is next in the throwing order, and the player has determined the location of their lie, and the player has addressed their lie, and the playing area remains clear. So all five of those things must be true for the clock to start. If anything gets in the way of those five things, like when Gannon had the deer run in front of him, all of that resets. Everything
Reset.
stops.
Okay.
Even if you use a time extension, which we're going to talk about, that gets refunded to you as well. So those five have to be actively okay. And then when it comes to addressing the lie, the trigger that starts the clock, a player has addressed their lie at the point when they begin taking any action indicating that they are preparing to throw. Such actions include, but are not limited to, there's some ambiguity, so we can talk about this. But here's the ones that they write. 1, marking the lie with a mini marker. 2, placing a supporting point on the lie. 3, executing a pre-shot routine. 4, using a rangefinder. That is huge. 5, checking the wind. So even if you're at your bag and you're checking the wind when it's your turn, your clock's starting. 6, cleaning casual obstacles. 7, testing the ground and footing. And again, it includes these, but it's not limited to these things. So very interesting. Nate, what are your thoughts?
Okay, I think that the first thing that came to mind was the situation with Aaron Gossage and at the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship, and that question was actually brought up in this meeting because I think that this is trying to address exactly that. There's been some ambiguity in the past of when that clock actually starts, and for example, if you guys recall, Aaron threw it out of bounds. And when he went to mark his lie, he took the lie straight back in line with the basket and created a new lie. So he picked up his mini after taking the meter in bounds and then took it back. And so the question was, when does Aaron's clock truly start? And what did the PDGA guy say, Brian? He said, refer to a different rule that talks about fairness in the game, correct? I can't remember the exact rule, but in his view, when you are going to reset your lie and determine a new lie because you're taking it in line with the basket based on that OB rule, that the clock should reset when he's setting his lie. And so he put his mini marker down, picked out the rangefinder, and his clock had reset from the first time that he took his meter inbounds. I think that the specificity here is great. In particular, using the rangefinder and checking the wind, because I think that that is a big reason why things slow down at the top, is because if a player A throws and then player B is next to throw and they are standing by their bag, using the chalk, checking the wind, then using the rangefinder, and they're assuming that their clock hasn't started yet, and then they get to their lie and they're doing the practice throws, I think that that is going to help expedite this whole thing and kind of speed up our game at the top level, which I think is somewhat necessary, right? I think that we could tighten things up. So I love the specificity here. And yeah, I love the specificity and the clearing of casual obstacles. Is this redefining like the dead and unattached thing in the past, or is that a
Yes.
different rule that we're going to talk
We
about,
are going to
Brian?
talk about this. They are redefining what that is. So,
Okay.
essentially, I'll say this now. If you have to have your whole card move a log for you because it's that big, that's not a casual obstacle. So we'll just say that doesn't apply here.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
What are your
so
thoughts on this excessive time, redefining it?
I think it's good. I think we needed it. At a certain point, players can always cry favoritism if there's no even a rough guideline to how we do this. This is going to be better for the marshals. It's going to be better for the players because again, when you don't have any structure, then it's way more personal. So then players can take it more personally because it's not like, oh, you did this because, oh yeah, you used a rangefinder while it was your turn and your clock started. They can't say anything about that. It's like when you're working customer service. I loved when I was able to just refer to company policy as a reason why they couldn't do something. It felt great. Otherwise, it just sounded like I was an idiot. I was just a jerk trying to tell them what they couldn't do. So I enjoy that they're trying to make this happen. I have a feeling that over time it's going to continue to get refined, but I like what they're doing. A couple things though that we really need to make clear. There, so say this, Aaron Gossage. I think it's a good case study here because yeah, he made a lie and thought, I'd rather move farther back, and then he would establish a new lie. You can do that. And the only way that it would start to feel nefarious or intentional is if Aaron is looking at the basket, makes a lie, moves it back like a foot, moves it back forward like a foot, and you start to see him intentionally doing that. So his clock resets.
Okay.
That is when G comes into play. A player who engages in undue delay arriving at their lie, but refuses to address their lie, has taken excessive time. So
Interesting.
this is essentially, at least the way I'm interpreting it. Yeah, it's like an interpretation of their intention. So if you can tell they're trying to game the system, yeah, then you can call them on that. And again, that's going to be one of those tough ones that, when it comes to self-officiating, you have to call someone out on their behavior. But again, they have that written. This wasn't written before. And I think that's great. Okay. Moving on. Continuing on with time. So this is about time extensions, another huge one. And again, this is just at pro, majors, and elite series events. So your local C tier, you're not going to get 2 time extensions. These rules are not going to apply. 4.09 time extensions. Implement 2 time extensions per player per round at pro, majors, and elite series events. Players in MPO and FPO, this is again all new writing in the rule book. Players in MPO and FPO divisions at majors and elite series events may use up to 2 time extensions per round. A time extension adds 30 seconds to the player's allotted time under 802.03c. A player uses a time extension by notifying the group in a manner understandable to all players. Players may not use more than one time extension on a single throw. You can't preload a minute onto your next throw.
Okay.
If a player exceeds their allotted time under 802.03c without using a time extension, another player in their group must call the time extension on their behalf. This does not require a second and uses one of the following players' time extensions.
Wow.
If a
That's monumental.
This is what I was talking about. So it's so
Mhm.
much easier to just be like, that's one of your time extensions, rather than like you're playing too slow, that's a stroke. Like it's a completely different thing. I
Well,
mean, it's a warning, but
do you think again that this will encourage more self-officiating? Like, do you think that that will, if there's a player on the card, that they're more incentivized to say, "Hey, that's a time extension," or do you think players are still going to kind of default to being passive?
I wonder. I really wonder, because for me, I think it would affect me. I think I would be counting a little bit more. It wouldn't be
Yeah.
all the time, but I think if a player was starting to really seem like they were taking a while, I would start to pay more attention. I think it's going to be the most important on lead cards and cards that are going to have marshals, because the marshals are only focused on that. So when it comes to the players, I'm not sure. I think some are really going to buy into it, and I think some are just going to space out as always and not worry about it. But again, uh, you don't need a second to call a time extension on a player. So to me, that's a lot nicer than like subjectively saying I started your time at this time because I felt like that was the time. So I think that paired with how we start the timer, I think this is better. Um, well, let's continue. If a player is using a time extension and the playing area is no longer clear, so again, the deer running in front of Gannon, that gets refunded to him if he uses a time extension. Say he adds 30 seconds to his throw. It's a fairway shot, so that's 45 seconds this year. And he gets to the last second, deer runs in front of him, everything starts over. So that's a good thing to know. And then if a player exceeds the additional time allotted by the time extension, they receive warnings and penalties as specified at 802.03g. So same stuff as before, but you get two extensions essentially. If a player exceeds their allotted time under 802.03c, after using both time extensions, they receive a penalty throw under that same rule.
Mm,
They do not
no
receive a
warning.
warning. Time extensions must be
Interesting.
noted on the scorecard. The one thing I hope we get is notation for us as commentators. It's like
Yeah.
basketball commentators not knowing how many fouls a player has.
Right.
We got to know if they're going to start getting penalties. So
Yeah.
if PDGA officials or PDGA staff are listening, please give us that. That'd be great.
Well, it looks like
Yeah.
there needs some. No, correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon. It looks like they need to clear some language up here as well, because it says on B, if they exceed the time extension, they receive warnings and penalties. But then the very next one on C, it says there are no warnings. They do not receive a warning. It's straight to a penalty. So it looks like there's some language that could be cleared up there, because it seems like you exceed your two time extensions, then the next one is just straight to a penalty, which
I
is
think,
interesting.
well, I think if you use your first time extension and you still go over, that receives a warning. But if you use both of your two and then you get another one over time, that's when you get a penalty right away.
Oh, okay, okay, that clears that up. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the next my next question to try and poke a hole in this is, if the playing area is no longer clear, so what kind of defines that, right? Because a player could be ready to throw, and then let's say someone is behind the basket, up, a spectator, and they move. Like, where is the line drawn to determine whether the playing area is cleared? Would that reset it, or would that not reset it?
I think it's a great question. And that's a great big hole that you just poked in that, because yeah, that leaves it up to the opinion of the thrower. But then also I think there's a line there as well. Like a bee could fly in front of them and they could try to claim that it's not clear. But because they're allergic to bees or something like that. So
Especially down the stretch, right?
yeah.
If it's like hole, 17, and they're all of a sudden in the woods, they're up one, and this shot is everything. Like, they're gonna and they don't have any time warnings
Well,
or time extensions, they're going to be like, hey, the playing field wasn't clear. There was a kid like moving with their family up there. So this is going to be an interesting one to see. Maybe we need some bullet points under part 3 in this that kind of define when the playing area is clear and when it really gets reset.
yeah, I got nothing for you there. I think it's really it's a nice thought experiment, especially with marshals involved too, because then the player has to clearly communicate to the marshal, hey, these people are walking back there. Am I good to reset? And I frankly, I think that's totally fine. And I think that's a good question to ask your card as well. Um, but if your card looks at you and says, no, you got to throw. I don't know what else you're supposed to do. So that again, it could lead to some discussions that don't go over too well. Anything about the time before we move on, Nate?
Yeah, I guess I had a question. So to clarify, we're not changing anything to do with 30 seconds. There was talk of that, but it is staying 30 seconds. There's no move toward 45 mentioned in the new changes.
I am fairly certain that during maybe not in the notes that we got, but I'm fairly certain that in that meeting he said that it was 30 seconds on the tee, 30 seconds inside circle 1 or 2. We'll have to double check that, and then 45 seconds everywhere else. And
Okay. Yeah.
I know if we had the rules we have now and it's 45 seconds, it would feel like a complete slog, and some players would take full advantage of that. But I think now that we've really defined when the clock starts, and it's a lot earlier than I think we previously thought, I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. Um, that's my personal opinion. I know some people really don't think this is going to do anything. I personally think with some time, I think this really is going to help pace of play. That's my call.
Great.
Okay, provisionals. They have a lot of new language about when you can take a provisional. Because Nate, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but I've had players blown up on my card that are like, I'm just going to take a bunch of provisionals and I'm just going to throw some practice shots just because I'm not sure. My disc could have fallen in a black hole and it could disappear. So I might need to take a provisional. But they are really defining when you can do this. So provisional throws. New procedures and definitions. This is 80902. Provisional throws may only be taken in the following circumstances. 1, when it is unclear or there is a disagreement about how to properly proceed under the rules, or 2, when the thrower intends to appeal a ruling, or 3, when the following are true. The status of the disc is unknown. The disc might be lost or in an out of bounds or relief area, and a provisional throw will prevent backtracking. So essentially, you can't just take a provisional throw and play things out both ways. It's not that simple anymore. You have to meet all of these requirements. So let's continue on. Provisional throws are not available in the following situations, even if the requirements in 80902C are otherwise met. 1, when a disc potentially missed a mandatory. In that case, from the way I interpret it, it's a vote. It's a vote from the other 3 players in the card. Did they make the mando? Did they not?
That's a big
2,
one.
That's a huge one.
Yeah.
When the player is considering abandoning the throw, can't do that. When you want to abandon the throw, you can't do that.
You can't decide. You can't. That clears it up because you can't throw the provisional off the tee or rethrow from where you just last threw and then check your lie and then be like, oh, yeah, it's actually bad enough that I should take this rethrow. That's what that's clearing up. I think there have been some cases where a player threw it so far into a blackberry jungle that they're not certain, but they don't want to go to their lie and then come all the way back. It's like once you decide to abandon the throw and rethrow, you have to take that new shot. You can't play it as a provisional and then decide. I really like that clarification.
And then the last one is when the only issue is whether or not a penalty throw applies. So it has to be more specific than that. So to begin a provisional sequence, the player must do all of the 3 following things in a manner understandable to all members in the group. They must declare that they're starting a provisional sequence, and explain why they are starting the sequence, and explain which sequence of throws will be used for which resolution. Um, Everything else is considered a practice throw. So that's something that players really should learn, because, yeah, I've seen it played wrong numerous times. I think the biggest one is there's the mandatory ones where they're not sure if they've missed the mandatory or not, and they want to get some other opinions. Really, it's the card that's going to vote on that. And then, yeah, the abandoning of the throw. You can't just say, "Oh, I don't like that lie. I'm not going to go get my disc from there." You have to rethrow. You take the penalty. But yeah, that's that for provisionals. Any questions, Nate? Any holes to poke?
No, that's pretty good clarification there. I like it.
Okay, so now moving obstacles. This is a big one because I have seen all sorts of crap out there when it comes to moving obstacles. I have seen some of the most ridiculous technicalities used on why someone should be able to move an entire tree during their turn. I think establishing when the clock
Yeah,
starts, huge deal. I think
it is.
establishing what a casual obstacle is a huge deal. So here we go.
Well, we should reference real quick. I think we should reference why this is particularly funny for you and I, Brian, because way back when, well,
Oh
this
yeah.
is okay. This is, guys, this is 2021 Worlds. This is on the Gatekeeper Media YouTube channel. So Brian and I are the commentators for the post production on Gatekeeper Media. We're doing the Worlds commentary, right? And we're playing. This is late at night. This is like 1 o'clock in the morning, not exaggerating. And this is round, I don't know which round it was actually. Maybe like middle of the tournament, round 3. Paul Macbeth, who we all know goes on to lose in a playoff to James Conrad from the Holy Shot. He's playing the course. It is, remind me of the course, Brian. It's the
The
fort. It's
fort.
the fort.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fort in Ogden, Utah. And right next to this river on this hole, I think it was early on, hole 4 or something, hole 4 or 5, there were these logs that the tournament director had kind of put to define the circle, the circle's edge, right? It was kind of a aesthetic of the hole. Be it he just kind of cleaned up the green a little bit, put these big logs down. So most of the people that I played with and most of the people that Brian and I watched on the coverage, when they had their disc up against that log and they had their 35 footer, they would mark it and then they would kind of straddle the log and make this awkward putt. And Paul Macbeth, he walks up and he just picks up the log and he just tosses it to the side down toward the creek, puts his mini down, just buries the putt. And this, remind you, this is on post production coverage. So I'm like, wait a second. I don't think he can do that. And Brian, as he should, is like, wait a second, Nate, that's dead and unattached. And it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't think Paul Macbeth can do that. And it became an actual controversy, right? It got brought up. It was like reposted. And, the Paul Macbeth fans out there, I was getting hate mail. Like, dude messaged me and is like, you have no right to speak about this. You've won 3 B tiers in your life. You need to check yourself. And so I'm like, wait a second, like this is not my intention here. So we go to the PDGA, talk about it. And again, I'm not trying to get Paul Macbeth actually stroked. That's not my intention. We're just getting clarification on the rule. It turns out at the time in 21 that the tournament director, if they defined one of the like logs on their course as being part of the course, then you could not move the log. Even if it was dead and unattached. So it turns out in that rule book that year, he said all these logs are placed here intentionally. So turns out Paul
Wow.
Macbeth couldn't move the log, and this whole all this hate mail was like, injustice. And yeah, just a really funny interaction with this rule. So I love that they are clarifying this, and I love that they're clarifying this loose debris thing, because for years we've all heard, well, it's dead and unattached, you can move it. So Brian, walk us through this new rule and kind of break down what is loose debris here.
Yes. So first off, when you think of loose debris, listeners at home, what do you think of? You're not thinking of an entire tree. So I think everyone has a pretty good idea of what it is. Is it easy to move by yourself? That's probably loose debris. But let's get into some of the changes. It's not like it's entirely new wording here. They just really wanted to clean some of the stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll get into 80301B. A player is not allowed to move any obstacle on the course with the following exceptions. A player may move casual obstacles that are resting on the playing surface farther from the target than the front edge of the lie. A casual obstacle is any item or collection of loose debris, such as small stones, that was new, small unconnected branches, pine cones, leaves, or or things that the player can easily and quickly move by themselves or other objects designated by the tournament director and not intentionally placed as part of the course or event and not embedded in the playing surface. So pretty clear. I think that's some great wording that they added. But I think, again, trying to tie up any loose ends on this kind of thing will prevent some of these ridiculous things from happening. Have you ever had that, Nate? You ever had a player say, "Oh, can you guys come help me move this?"
Oh,
And you're there for like
everyone.
2 minutes.
Well, yeah, and then there's this interesting thing where you're like, hold on, I'm like bending over and helping to pick up this tree before I throw my next disc golf shot, which I've always like just gotten down and dirty and helped. But I could imagine if I'm playing for the dub and, someone on my card is like, can you help me lift this like 200-pound tree? Can we all gather and do this? That you kind of don't want to do that, right? You don't want to pick up a tree with some thorns on it. And this is a part of this PowerPoint slide here that the PDGA presented to us. They noted that if it takes more than one person to move it, it isn't a casual obstacle, which is very interesting here because it's like if you're the Hulk, man, if you're Gavin Babcock, like go ahead and move it. Just pick up that tree and toss it. It's loose debris for you, you know. but
But that also starts your clock. So that's the
yeah,
thing. So if it takes you a long time to move that, you're eating into your time, which is not that much.
it's a good point. Yeah.
So again, for people listening, they made it very clear to us that dead and unattached, not a thing. That is not a thing. You follow the wording that they put into the rule book, and that should give you a pretty good idea of what you can move and how. I don't really have anything else. I think it's pretty well done. All right, moving on. This is a much smaller one, but actually, this is just helping the players to understand a rule a little bit better and to remind them of what they can do. So, 80502 essentially just talks about what happens with line of play relief after a disc is out of bounds or above 2 meters. Again, you go out of bounds, you can take the disc as far back as you want on the line of play. And really, all they added was uh, wording from a previous rule, but they also placed it here. So the new wording essentially says a lie designated by a marker disc is placed on the playing surface up to 1 meter away from the point where the disc was last in bounds. After establishing this lie, a player may then subsequently mark a new lie, which is farther from the target and is on the line of play without additional penalty. This is essentially going back to the Aaron Gossage situation at the Pro Tour Championship. So that's all it is. It's just saying, hey, remember that you can do that. That's not a penalty to establish a new lie. And if you're doing it in good faith, your timer, frankly, starts as well or restarts. That's it. Anything on that, Nate?
No, no notes on that.
Okay. 1.08, I believe this is in the tournament operations manual, reduction of field size. So they're going to allow more options for events. So the biggest impact this is going to make is on cuts. So the new wording. So the field may be reduced for a semifinals or finals at the discretion of the tournament director, provided, and this is the new stuff, provided that the cut line, either as a percentage or number of places, is announced prior to opening player registration for the event. The only exception may be due to the PDGA mid-event suspension and cancellation policy being invoked to finish an event. Making the cut line at or above the payout line is highly recommended. And that's it. They have removed a ton of wording, and that's it. But what this is going to allow for is tournaments where the cut has a lot of players going into Championship Sunday that are not going to cash. And I don't know how often they're going to do this, but I believe a lot more European events do stuff like that. But it has to be advertised in advance. And to me, I never saw a problem with it. You make it to Sunday, that's an accomplishment in itself. It sucks that if going into Sunday you're not going to make cash, that sucks. But I've done that in tournaments without a cut, and I've been fine. So I don't know. I think it could be fine, but you could have tournaments where
Yeah.
60 players make it to Sunday and 40 get paid. But what do you think?
I feel that we should just kind of follow in the footsteps of golf here. I don't think that for every aspect of our game, but for me, for some time now, I feel like if we have a 4 or, the rare chance of five round event, like the cut for me should be going into the weekend. If we have a 4 round tournament, I think we should cut after 2. And I think everyone that makes the cut gets paid. Everybody that makes the cut get paid, because what the situation that is sometimes possible is you have a cut, and then you, just as you mentioned, you have 60 players that make the cut and then 40 are getting paid. So you have 20 players who are playing a weekend of disc golf and then not getting paid. And in my view, where the sport is currently at, for example, if we're playing a DGPT in Portland, we have a 4 round tournament. If we made the cut after Friday going into the weekend, the players that didn't make the cut, like, they could start traveling to the next tournament, they could start preparing for the next tournament, or they could go play a B tier on Saturday. They could go and actually make something of their time. And I think that there's this interesting, I think what they're trying to solve here is right, is like players not having anything to play for, and just kind of giving up because it's like they're not going to make the cash. They're way out of it. And I think we can solve that by making it a strict cut into the weekend and making it to where if you make the cut, you get paid no matter what. And there is a counter argument there. It's like, if you get paid no matter what, if you've made the cut, then what do you have to play for? A few more $100. But I just think it's a really sticky situation if you have someone playing for 36 holes and then they're not, they don't have a chance of making cash after the 3rd round going into the 4th, then they really don't have anything to play for. So do you feel like we could change that cut to after Friday, after 2 rounds, or is that too quick, Brian? What do you think?
If our prize money matched that of traditional golf, I'd be all for it. But to me, I think there's a lot of players that need that money to stay out there on the tour. And if last cash was 10 grand, I think that would be fine, because you make cash once every 2 tournaments, once every 3 tournaments even, you'd be making far more than a lot of players make that are grinding for the cut line. I think we got to give more players a chance. Um, and I, I don't know. I'm fine if everyone who makes the cut gets the cash. That's fine, especially because most of the time it's a three-day event, and then you have a 4th round. That's the cut line. That's fine. You give the players plenty of opportunity to make the cut, make the cash. I'm also fine with letting extra players try to shoot the round of their life and try to make that cash, because again, we're not making millions of dollars, at least most of us.
Yeah.
Um, None of us are making that in prize money. So to me, 2 days, I don't know, that removes a lot of fight from a lot of these, you may, whether they're younger or newer players to the tour, that making the cash is not a given. I want to give them an
Yeah.
opportunity. That's my thought.
Hear that. I hear that. Well, PDGA, that's what they're recommending, is what they said in language. Making the cut line at or above payout line is highly recommended. So I really like that language. They're not forcing it, but they're highly recommending it. I like
Yeah.
it.
Moving on. And these are a little bit smaller. I might not read everything here on some of these because I feel like the concepts are pretty easy to get across. This is just minutia. So 80604, they are changing the name of relief area to required relief area. And they're just further designating these different areas that I'll talk about. And I really like this. And they're also color coordinating this with the Disc Golf Pro Tour. So we have some standards. And so the fans, the commentators, the players all know what to look out for, because there's 5 different types of areas that we have to pay attention to. So this brings us into the next one, 4.08, course markings and equipment, align PDGA regulations and DGPT practices. So right out the gate, here are the ones that we have to think about. There's an out of bounds area. There's a casual area. There's a required relief area. There's a hazard zone, and there's a drop zone. So now the standards, out of bounds is white, casual relief is red, required relief area is pink. You're going to see that at the first Disc Golf Pro Tour event of the year at Olympus. Hazards always yellow, drop zones are always orange. And most of the time, this is how it is normally, but I like that there's no way to do it otherwise. That's nice. They're thinking about calling a casual area an optional casual area just to further illustrate what you can and can't do there. But yeah, I don't know. I like that they're trying to set some regulations on these more detailed items.
I'm down with the color system.
Other thing, they very specifically added in here that advertising assets and spectator rope are now being considered. So B in this section, advertising assets, tents, and camera stands are obstacles from which the player can obtain relief from after the group determines the relief available by the rule. The player may take 1 additional meter of relief along the line of play. So that's advertising assets, tents, so feather banners, ad boards, stuff like that. Spectator rope. This is actually a great one because I've been told in the past, I don't know if it's Pro Tour events when I was playing, I was told that I couldn't move spectator rope. They now specifically state that you can always move spectator rope as if they were casual obstacles, but they must return the spectator rope to working order if moved, or else they receive a 1 throw penalty.
All right.
Solid. I think that's just
Love
fine.
that.
Moving on. Match play. Simple one. We don't see match play too much, but they have made some changes. Essentially, any unnecessary throws, if there's a hole where you can't win, any throws after that are considered practice throws. And yeah, you can be assessed a penalty, but I guess it doesn't really matter. Oh, actually, sorry, it does matter. The penalties are added to the player's score in the next hole. So that's where it's match play specific. Pretty much it. And then player code of conduct, another thing here, courtesy warnings carry over into playoffs. So that's another thing that they're changing. I think that's pretty straightforward. Anything on that, Nate?
No, that kind of makes sense.
Well, Nate,
Well,
we've talked about this a lot. Look at this next one.
This is really exciting. I couldn't have been begging for this one.
4.10, extension of competition, establish a Monday finish procedure for extreme circumstances. Before I get into this and the exact wording, what do you think about that concept?
I feel that it makes a lot of sense here because at this point, most of the tour, they're not going back to work on Monday, right? Like the majority of them are there for the long haul. So their Monday's freed up. I've always felt that when we have a lightning delay, that instead of going to 2 rounds and eliminating some golf that has been played if they didn't play 13 holes, canceling that. I think what was that Ledgestone a couple years back? Kyle Klein, was in the mix. What was it Calvin and Gannon that they gave the tie to? I can't remember exactly.
Calvin and Rick.
Calvin and Rick got the tie, yeah. But Kyle had started off pretty hot. And then that golf got just canceled because the tournament ended early due to lightning. And I think that the opportunity to extend the tournament to Monday makes a lot of sense because everyone wants to play more golf. They want that complete tournament. And they should be given the chance. So I love it. And I think while this will actually make some difficult logistics for operations. That's going to be tough because they already have they've already got a short week, right? They pack up the course on Sunday. And when we're talking about operations, we're talking about the people that are packing up all the course assets, whether it just be all the signage, all the tents around, the hole one, tournament central, all the guardrails, all the spectator rope, miles of spectator rope. The DGPT ops team is packing that all up, putting it in the trailer. The Disc Golf Network media team has cameras set up on the course. They have a satellite for signal out on the course. They're running cord. Those things are all packed up on Sunday night. So while this is good for competition, it makes it tricky for everyone else that is putting on this tournament. Makes it tricky for the tournament staff, right? Because volunteers, the local organizing committee, they are working on Monday, right? They're going back to their regularly scheduled programming on Monday. And it's going to be tough to get all those volunteers to come back. And it's tough to ask of our teams to extend, but it's good for competition. Brian, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the only comeback, and it's written here in the ruling, the tournament director approves. Um, oh, you can only extend competition with a few things like weather being super severe. Extending play is the only way to complete the event's originally scheduled rounds. And the tournament director approves, and either at majors, the PDGA director of competition approves it, or at Elite Series events, the series tour director approves. So obviously, when it comes to scheduling, I know DGPT staff, they're not sitting there and going, oh, these back to back weeks. Yeah, we'll let those extend into Monday. It's literally impossible. And I've done some of these pack outs, and it doesn't always happen on Sunday night. It's sometimes so much work, and they have so little volunteer help like that late on Sunday that a pack out sometimes isn't possible until Monday afternoon. And then they're having to book it and hopefully get there Tuesday night or, late on Monday night if they drive all
Start
day.
setting up the course like Tuesday,
It's
Wednesday. Yeah, quick
insane work.
turnaround.
It
Yeah,
is such hard work. When I talk to Greg and Evan and all those guys that do that week in and week out, like you have such an incredible respect for what they do. And really, you can't live a normal life. You're essentially a carny. They are the most like carny like employees, maybe not in personality, but like in the
like
commitment
carnival.
to what they're like they're a traveling carnival. They're towing all these
Yeah.
trailers, they're setting things up, they're tearing them down, they're leaving. And they're doing
Hmm.
it after week after week after week, sun up to sundown. And when the tournament starts, they have to do crowd control and all this other stuff. So, yeah, they are the unsung heroes of the tour, and I love those guys. But I know that the tour itself would not put them through that on certain stretches. So
Sure.
that's a big one. The last one that I find really interesting at events other than the PDGA Professional Disc Golf World Championships, play may be extended through sunset of the day following the scheduled end of competition. And then the last one, at the PDGA Professional Disc Golf World Championships, play must be extended until a champion is determined. So to me, that says they extend into Tuesday, they extend into Wednesday until a champion is crowned. That's what it
Great.
sounds like to me, Nate.
Don't shorten the world championship. I love it. Love it. You can't, a lightning storm is not going to get you the world title. Got to play five. Down with
Well,
it.
Nate, that's it. That's 2026 for you. What's next? What's next in the rules? What are they going to give us? They going to
Uh,
take away Circle One finally?
hey, what was the email or the portal that Andy mentioned if you want to have some public discourse on the rule change? Because, PDGA, they get a lot of hate, right? But they change these rules every year, and they change it because we talk about it. You guys at home, you talk about it, whether you're playing your C tier or you're playing your A tier or you're coming out here to play a Disc Golf Pro Tour. You email them, they'll take it into the equation. And I love just the pace at which they are willing to take in feedback and implement it. I think there was a time where that pace was a little slow, and now that time they're speeding up, right? So, do you recall what that was?
I don't know exactly what you're referring to. However, they always post publicly when public comment is available, and they always
Yeah.
provide the link of being able to go do that. And
Okay.
frankly, you can very easily see. I believe they released an article with all this wording, and anytime there is a strike through, a through line, on the green highlighted text, that means public comment was what changed that new wording. So actually, when you go through this, the fans and the people playing disc golf week in and week out, they actually made a pretty big impact on some of these new rules. And also, when it comes to the time extensions, it's nice to know the DGPT Players Console, they are very actively working with the people making these Elite Series and major specific rules, and they approve of these new time rules. So I'm very curious to see how it plays out. Frankly, I think it's going to solve a lot, maybe not immediately, but over time, attitudes are going to start changing about these types of things. And frankly, it's going to get so competitive at a certain point where if you're not strict about these types of things, you're kind of losing an advantage that you can gain by calling these players out for breaking the rules. So I don't think it's going to be there right yet, but I think we're very close to things really getting tightened up. Nate, anything else for the fans before we head out?
Well, look, so we were talking about this tournament roundup middle or the beginning of this podcast, and since then, round 3 at the Memorial is complete. Gannonburg
Uh-oh.
Bogeys the 12th. He shoots 13 under par. He had 3 pars and a bogey. That is 1075 rated, but Parker Welk closed the gap. Aaron Gossage closed the gap. So Gannonburg has 2 over Parker Welk, who shot 1095,
Wow.
15 down. And Drew Gibson shoots a 1095 rated 15 down with a bogey. He had 1 par and 1 bogey. 1095 rated to make the lead card. So he is 5 back, Aaron 4 back, Parker 2 back. So I think the odds are still going to be in Gannonburg's favor, but we definitely have a battle on our hands there. And this was a great discussion, Brian. Loved really getting to dive into these rules with you, and looking forward to seeing how this time extension thing really plays out and how the lack of being able to argue your case really plays out.
You're no longer playing abysmally slow. You just need a time extension, Nate. That's it. I don't need to tell you anything about your pace of play. I can just tell you need a time extension. Good night, folks. Enjoy the Super Bowl. We'll see you out there.